welcome to the workshop for responsible data scientists. Today we're going to talk about the future of data science and what we mean by that and how we can go towards a better and responsible future for data science. I'm doing this workshop with Tanja Ubert, my colleague, and we're going to introduce ourselves briefly first. So I think the next slide is... Kun je naar volgende of...
Yeah. The next slide is first about why it's necessary to do it, and then we're going to introduce ourselves.
Oh, okay, that's true. Yes. So as you can see here, why I am here today, why Tanya is here today, is because we're going to talk why should data professionals understand data ethics. So as you can see, it's an research from AI Now Institution from New York, and it really gives an insight on what happened in 1 year. This is 2017, 2018. So what's very obvious is the Cambridge Analytica case, but also the Facebook and breach exposed case where users, their profiles were being exposed. But you also have the Tesla autopilot fatal car crash, and all these little incidents and scandals lead to think more about data ethics for the future. So that's why we're here. We're going to talk about the importance of this discipline and why it matters so much to society and to people.
Okay. Well, short introduction. Most of you know me, so I make it very brief. I'm a teacher, lecturer at Rotterdam University of Applied Sciences. I'm currently creating, together with Gabriella and some other colleagues, a new program, Applied Data Science and AI. And one of the things we add to that program is data modeling. So that's our connection here. And I will go into that later a little bit more, but that's me in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, and I'm Gabriella Obispa. I'm also lecturer at the University of Applied Science in Rotterdam. I teach responsible technology and I look at the ethical, legal, and social aspects of technology. I'm finishing my master in technology law at the Vrije Universiteit of Amsterdam, and I'm also doing research on the topic of gender and tech. Yes. So what do we mean by responsible data science? Well, the first wave of data science was mostly focused on what we can do with data. So mostly like the opportunities, the possibilities. But what we think it's responsible data science is thinking about how we should deal with data. So it's more like a shift towards what we can do, towards what we should do with data. So then we're going to think more about society at large, but also thinking about the influence of data on people and economic. Yes. So if you can see here, you see this is from the European communication strategy document. It says, in a society where individuals will generate ever increasing amounts of data, the way in which the data are collected and used must place the interest of the individual first, in accordance with European values, fundamental rights and rules. That's why we think it's very important to put values at the central point of data ethics, or when you're dealing with data. And even this document shows the importance of keeping in mind that when you're dealing with data in whatever form, you should put people and society first, and think about the fundamental rights of people and also the rules and values. And this also has a positive effect, because once individual citizens trust these data-driven solutions, once the first is done, people will trust more these technologies and innovation will prosper, because now it's not getting the full trustness. Now it's not getting the full, how can I explain this? The full trust of people, because there's still a lot of scandals, a lot of things are happening with data. So it's very important to keep in mind for innovation and for having data-driven technologies in your company, to be aware of the trust of your clients, citizens, so they can embrace also your technologies and your data-driven solutions.
That's what we addressed in previous sessions here also, that the data mesh, for example, is very attractive to just put all your data together and mix it and get value from it. But we must not lose sight of who the data subjects are and how we
Yes.
provide protection for them, and be in a way good citizens and good technicians by making sure that everybody is aware of their ethical how do you call it, responsibilities, and take the responsibility, because we are the ones with the knowledge about keeping context with data, and so we should provide services and advice on how to protect the data subjects from all the technology that we're creating.
Yes, because in a certain way you're adding value to the people's lives. So the good life of people are really being affected by these kind of practices. So keeping in mind the good life of people is very important to have be aware of the effect you have on their good life. So
Yeah,
that's why we think it's very
yeah,
important to
yeah.
keep this kind of values and rights in mind.
Yeah, and one of the things where we have to deal with right now, the current situation, of course, is that law isn't ready yet. That's why we have these 3 points. Of course, we are looking at the possibilities of technologies. We're looking at the current law, but because usually there isn't law yet, we have to take into account what is desirable. Because when we are at the frontier of new solutions, new inventions, new innovations, you have to take your responsibility and also shape the future in a way that you think is desirable. And we can use data ethics for that. And that's what we call responsible data science. So that's not just privacy and privacy by design, but also taking in a responsibility for the ethical side of things. Is it desirable that this new innovation is getting into the world? Because we all know once it hits the internet, it's never going to go away. And do you want to be responsible for adding this to the world, your invention, if you didn't take into account the ethical implications of what you brought into this world? So these are
Yes.
the questions we think you should ask. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good adding, because when you focus on the possibilities, mostly we focus. I'm sorry. We mostly focus on the possibilities, so what we can do with data, and when the law something can be lawful but still not ethical. So that's why it's always good to think about, okay, even though it's lawful what you're doing, is desirable for society and people or the environment, for example. So that's why they are very well connected, law and ethics, but at the same time something can be lawful but still not ethical, and that's where ethics really plays a role also in giving you more insights of what I'm doing. Is it going to bring add value to someone's to the good life of people, for example, or society? Yes. So yes. So data ethics is a new branch of ethics that studies and evaluates data-related moral issues. Um, well, it refers really to really minimize harm to people and society. That's actually the core of data ethics. It's also very context dependent. So it depends on, for one project, for one data project, the data may not affect others in a certain way as another data project. It depends really on the context and why and how you're using the data. And not handling the data lawfully or ethically can have very large consequences for society, and also get the trusts will be lost in projects, products or innovation. That's why Europe is really busy to push innovation, but also hoe zeg je remmen? Sorry, how do you say remmen?
Pulling on the brakes a little bit, and that's, well, one of the things we hear in society, of course, that the GDPR and other laws are diminishing the amount of innovation. But sometimes you should ask yourself, is that a bad thing, that innovation is a little bit slowed down, a little bit more consideration is taken into account of what the effects of the innovation will be before we send it into the world? So you
Yes.
could look at it from two ways. You could say maybe it's slowing innovation a little bit, but on the other hand, it's going to make having a good world and a good life better. So
Yes, so it's important to really consider, like, Europe is really struggling with that part of, okay, innovation versus doing, of course, ethically responsible. So it's little like a field that's still very young, still needs a lot of thinking, a lot of research to really think what's the best way to deal with this. Because if you see other nations, so the US or China, they deal differently with this kind of things, and Europe really wants to really bring innovation forward, but also be ethical, and that's like a very complex thing to do. So it's still very young to really say something. Um, so yes. Now we have responsible. Oh, I have Tanya. I was finished. Did I finish the last one? Yeah. So one thing is also important to when you're dealing with data ethics. Put it in every stage of the data's life cycle. So not like one, but like it's an HL process. So try to really think about it from the end till from the beginning to the end, and then again. So it's a way it starts and doesn't end with it. It's, yeah, how can I explain this maybe clearer? So it's in all stages. Just be aware of data ethics, not only at the beginning, but also in the middle and at the end.
Yeah. It has
Um,
to be a recurring event. It's not something that's done when the project is done. You have to revise your ethical frameworks during and after the project, even if it's already in production, because ethics are changing, and ethics usually are the front runner before legislation is created. So
yes.
if you want to be front runner in data, you also have to be front runner on data ethics because the law is not there yet.
That's a good ad, because that's what ethics actually also provide right now. It provides guideline through this very complex landscape of how we should behave as responsible data scientists. So it really gives insights. Okay, this is what we think it's the best. And then when law will come in the future, it will be like you will be more prepared and also more aware of where your data project is going or leading towards, and then you can minimize the harm also. So you also have from Valor, she says thinking about data ethics can begin here, but it should not stop here. So it really means that in all stages, it's not like an ending point. It's always think about ethics as like a standard practice in your project. Yes, so then you also have, it's very important in data ethics are the values, of course. So it's important to know that other issues must be considered besides privacy, because often when we hear about data ethics and ethical AI, etc., it's also by almost always about privacy, but there are so much more values at stake. For example, as equality, justice, autonomy of people. So privacy is by far not the only thing that's at stake. There are so many other values that are also important to consider during your data projects. And the other ones are more on, for example, equality for bias, for example, or autonomy for surveillance of people. So it has more, it's far more than only privacy. And then what's very important also to consider when you're doing data projects is to look at fairness, accuracy, confidentiality, and transparency, because that will give you and also clients or citizens a way to feel confident and trust these kind of models, because otherwise you don't can really explain to people what your model is doing and where your data life cycle is actually going to. So it's important to keep the facts in place during your data project, especially when you're working with data models, and consider other values also that can be at stake in your project. So responsible data science incorporate ethical values as part of the innovation process. So again, data ethics not like a compliance box that you have to check off. It's really a part of the way you're doing projects. It has to be a natural way of thinking about your data projects. It's not to slow down. It's actually to improve your data projects. So examples that you can and again, it's still like it's very short time to explain all about data ethics, but I just chose the most important things I want to share with you. So examples can be evaluate how your data project will be used and how it can impact people and society. So you have all these instruments online that you can use, or you have institutions that can provide you with these instruments. So can you really think about where you're going to be? Oh, thank you. Um, where you can try these instruments. Oh, I lost my story. 1 second.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you have this
It's
instrument.
very
Yeah,
yeah, it's
sorry.
very important also to have a diverse test group and use diversity in your stakeholders, because we see all the examples like with the standard men used for data training, and then you have cars where women don't fit in, or safety measures that will kill women if they are once in a car crash, or the Microsoft service that doesn't want to open to my face because I'm not a white male, things like that. So inside of your data, in your data quality, it's not just about the technical data quality, it's also about the use and how you train your data science models. And data science, of course, is now the new oil. But before we make the oil into environmental disaster, I think we should take into account that ethics is really part of our job.
Yeah, so you're just more than a technologist. You're really having this responsibility. So when you evaluate that data project, make sure your team, as Tanya says, is diverse. You have diverse perspectives. So we often recommend, for example, people from a legal department or from an ethics department or someone from the business. So all these different perspectives can give you even more insight. It can make you build ethical to make your data project more ethical, and also give you more innovation insights, for example. Now, think about whom should be held accountable. That's a very important part also of data ethics. Who is accountable for the data projects? Because the harm they make us. That's true. It's always a big plus indeed. So the accountability part is very important, because now often we don't know who's accountable, and that's a very, it's very like a gray area still. So be aware. Okay, who's accountable, who's responsible for this part, for that part, so you can really look back at where it may gone wrong or not, and then you can ask someone for explanation, or even better their position by giving them more responsibility. Remain open to critical questioning of your data projects. So when you're having this diverse team and you're really looking at your data project, be open to critical, wait, I'm sorry, be open to critical questioning of your data project, be able to just speak about like, okay, I think this may go wrong or not. So it's also in companies often a cultural shift that you have to be open to really be very modest with technology, be modest, be aware that it's not always perfect, and it's okay because you can improve it with data ethics. Not really going to shut down your data project, but it's going to be I'm going to improve your data project. So stay open for critical questioning about it, and make a plan for the life cycle of the data you collect, use in your data project. Yes. For sure. So we think I'm going to explain one of them, and maybe Tanya can also choose one she wants to. But what I said before, best practices for responsible data science is data ethics should be in the spot light and out of the compliance box. It's not like compliance thing. It's a way of doing data project. It's a way of being a technologist that really looks at the future in a way that's responsible. So it's not a compliance box. It's really a way of thinking and mindset.
Yeah, I saw a really great remark in the comments that there should be sort of a Hippocratic oath, like for doctors, for data scientists, and data persons. I think a code of ethics, of course, already exists, but not everybody not everybody complies with it. And
Oh,
I think it's very good to have
yes.
a ethical way of work as part of the community. I think that would be great.
Yeah, because Valor, like that's a very big yeah, person in this world of data ethics, and she really tells about this part of when a doctor and a lawyer, they always do all these oaths. So for technologies, there also should be something like that in the future because they have an impact on the good life of people. So you really are noticing that this is something that really is in the head of data ethics because they're thinking about, okay, we should
Yeah.
give them also this kind of oaths and code of ethics to really know the impact they're having on
Yeah.
society.
Yeah.
Okay, the stakeholders diverse input were discussed. Diversity is very important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine the whole data ecosystem is very important because when you're working on this part with a data project, you think, oh, okay, like that's nothing's happening. But envision also what can happen in the long term when this data is going to be used in this company or in this model. So be very careful
Yeah. Yeah.
with the data ecosystem. Be very envision the data
Yeah.
ecosystem.
It's also part of the new IA Act and Data Act from the European Union, of course, because they say you're not responsible just for the data input, you're responsible for the data life cycle. And I think that that should be part of the project. And we've started with of course, the field is very young. There's not a lot developed, but we thought, well, we will give you something of homework to do if you want to look into this. It's just a few choices, not all the choices, so it's just a start. But I took the values that are mentioned in the report called opwaarderen, revalue in English, and it states some European values like privacy, autonomy, freedom, safety, control of technology, human dignity, justice, and power balance. And for every project, you could look what kind of legislation is there already in world policy, European policy, national policy, so that you at least are aware of what's out there. Of course, you can then check if there's policy already in the company, and you will find that there are blanks. That's why I put the question marks there, because the technologies are so new, there will be blanks, and then you could be the initiator of policy in a company. So be aware of that you're going to be the example usually when you do innovative stuff with data. So be the example and take that responsibility. And then you can, within those boundaries, you can translate it into reality by expert. But you don't forget to do assessments with all the stakeholders, not just the ones you like to work with, but also the ones that are the data subjects, the ones who are influenced by the things you make with your data. And make sure you add to the process regular reflection, testing, and audit of your data implementation on the ethical side of things. Because if you forget that part, then your ethical check will be out of date sooner rather than later. Because again, this is a very, very young field. It gets a lot of funding right now from all sorts of companies and organizations, and subsidized within the European Union and in the world. But it also makes it a playing field for sharks and people who don't want to add to the good life. So well, I try to be in the good side of things. So I would like to stress
Yeah,
that I want all us technicians to take our responsibility on this part. And of
yes,
course, this is one of the ways of looking at it. There are a lot of other standards and things like that. So there's
yes,
some on the slides. There are also more out there. And if you really want to know, of course, you can ask us for references. Later in the slides, I also have the information about a research center which you can look out to work together with. So that's
yes. I wanted
one of
to
the things. Yeah.
I wanted to react on someone says about the evil thing, intentionality. Often data projects are not being with bad intentions. It's just because not thinking about the unintended consequences, we end up doing harm. But it's not, almost not. It's almost not. Um, it's not always evil. It's just not being aware of where it can lead, and that's why envisioning your data ecosystem is important. Ethical reflection is important, and also being modest about your technology. So be critical and not just assuming because you made it, it works. It's just going to do only good things. It can also do harm. That's why you need ethics to help you to really think forward about how it can end up in society. So that's why I wanted to really react on that part. Then you also have a European perspective. So you have some regulations are. Ignorance is often It's also ignorance, but also we call it not really knowing that this is can happen. So being critical and modest is maybe the solution
Yeah.
for that part.
Yeah.
We
I
can go
think
to
the day and age where ignorance was bliss is gone now. I mean, you cannot state ignorance. I didn't know that I had to do it. I mean, time and age right now is that you take responsibility for your actions, and that's also if you are a professional. And there are, weapons of mass destruction is one of my favorites. Also, how to lie with statistics. There's a golden oldie. Data and Goliath is nice, of course. So if you need a list, there is a list.
yes.
And we will publish it one day somewhere. And I'm going into that later. But
Yeah, we
these
can
are,
next
yeah,
slide because it's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
not a lot of time to
yeah,
explain
yeah,
everything. So what we want to the main key point is be part of the solution of the problem, and this is very because it's also a data canvas. You can use that
yeah,
one as an instrument to really try to navigate these
yeah,
very complex and very like still new areas.
yeah.
Could go to the next
Yeah, we're not going to do it now, but if you want to try it, we've made a Miro where you can look into it and can try your questions in your project to put it along the lines of ethical design.
yeah.
It will be shared with Christian later. And as I said, we're doing research in our research center. This is the link to the site of our research center if you want to come in contact with us.
I
I
want
don't know how much time do we have?
Actually, you're 1 minute over your time.
Okay, then we will make that. We'll make that. Yeah.
I want to just explain one part. We can go back to this to the one that is we have 1 minute, Christian. You
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Oh, it goes so fast. I'm so sorry. So this is a very good practice. For example, in your role as a data scientist, what kind of values do you find important when dealing with these kind of data projects? It really gives insights from different roles. So if you choose data science as a role, it's a good one, but also as a user or someone that can be affected by your technology or data project. So really play with this kind of things to see how you can foresee the harm that can occur or what values you think it's important in your company or for yourself as a responsible as a future responsible data scientist.
Yeah. And in the Miro board, we provided some cards with values for you to try on. So
Yes.
if you like the subject, you can look at it there. All right. So I already touched on this. These are our contact details if you want to talk some more about this subject.